So some national intel and whispers from fall camps here. I want to take you to Texas. It's been a couple of days or a couple of shows since we have last spoken about Texas. I love Chip Brown. Chip Brown covers Texas in a very effective manner over at Horns 24/7. And so I was over on Horns 24/7 today, and Chip Brown was talking about the very latest in the quarterback battle there. Now, we spoke about this the other night, and what I told you was, based on what I knew about Steve Sarkisian and what we have seen matters to him at the quarterback position, and then when you listen to the characteristics of Hudson Card sounds more like a Sarkisian quarterback than Casey Thompson does. So at the very least, I have thought it's been a very spirited battle out there. Now, that's no mystery now. We all understand it's a spirited battle now. But Chip Brown had a pretty comprehensive update over at horns247.com today about the status of this quarterback battle, and I want to stress, going into the first scrimmage, which is ultimately where this is going to be decided. But I wanted to read you a quick excerpt, and you tell me what you make of this. This is Chip Brown writing about the quarterback battle. There are some team sources who feel like Hudson Card is making too much progress. He throws the ball too well not to be the guy. But others feel like Casey Thompson's 7 games of experience, second reaction skills, and vocal leadership give him the edge to open the season against a veteran Louisiana team on September 4th. And now we get to the anonymous source being quoted. Again, you make of this what you will. Quote, "There's a look-at-me quality to Casey Thompson with the way he posts his workout on social media and that kind of stuff. It's hard to read. It could be harmless, but I think some of his teammates feel like they don't know the real Casey. The bottom line is production." Yup, that's me speaking. Now we get back to the quote. "If you're grinding and leading your team to victories, no one will care what you're posting on social media. What he did in the Alamo Bowl surprised a lot of people in the locker room." So the first thing I love about this is it has always occurred to me that Chip Brown writes team updates that could seamlessly be transitioned into a Netflix series. They read like a Hollywood script. So much so that when I go to work for Outer Banks Season 3, I may call Chip Brown. But secondly, what do you make of that? Because I've heard that before, not about this race. I've heard that in general before. You'll get some guys that are very rah-rah, and I'm not saying this personally about Casey Thompson. This is a generic statement. I'm saying you've probably been around them, whether it's the guy or girl in the office place or the guy or girl in the locker room. You've heard the rah-rah. What if you go out on the field and that's the second best at the job that is going to directly impact your ability to succeed? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what they post on social media. None of that matters. If Hudson Card rips a 13 for 17 day for 3 touchdowns and no interceptions scrimmage off on Saturday, whenever it is they scrimmage, nobody cares what anyone's posting on social media. So a lot of that stuff gets blown out of proportion because some writers find it easier to talk about that stuff because they're familiar with it than they do when they talk about actual football matters. Well, football matters will decide this. And it's really, really interesting because the main concern here for me is not quarterback. The main concern for Texas right now is wide receivers. The same stuff we were talking about in the spring. If they didn't get Xavier Worthy in here from Michigan, they'd be in a world of hurt. They're still not in a good spot, but they would be in a world of hurt. Xavier Worthy and Jordan Whittington, to me, are the only 2 guys it feels like they know they can win with right now. And I stopped. Here we go. We'll do the horns up right now, but I'm giving you the number 2. They stopped at 2. Chip Brown echoed this today. 2 names. Now, there are some other names that are young and have some promise, but we're talking about trying to win games that in one case you're going to be a single-digit favorite in, and then you're going to go on the road to Arkansas the next week. This is not a time to mix and match. This is not a time to guess your way to a starting rotation. You got to know. So you can figure out your quarterback all you want to. Who are they throwing the ball to? That's the biggest question at Texas, and they do not have that figured out right now. What's the situation at Southern Cal? Let's go all the way across the country here. What's the real story at USC? So we have talked at length about how it feels like there's a lot more trepidation the closer you get to the program than there is nationally. And I was listening to our show that we did the other night, and it struck me that I may have taken, what am I looking at? We got comic books on the wall over here. Sometimes I get distracted by them. It may have been that I took a little bit too negative a tone. I made it sound like Southern Cal had no shot in the Pac-12 South. That's not it at all. I hold this program to a really high standard. I almost think like a Southern Cal fan. So when I talk about them, I am speaking about them with the entire backdrop being a national contending standard. And if they're not there, then it's not good enough for me. So understand that when I'm talking about Southern Cal. But What's the real story here? Well, the real story is at quarterback. Now we can talk about quarterback because that is the name of the game at Southern Cal. You may think to yourself, if you just flip through a preview magazine and you're a Minnesota fan who otherwise doesn't follow this program, you'd say, what happened? Did Keaton Slovis get hurt? No, he's not hurt. Well, did he quit the football team? Well, what are we talking about quarterback here? Quarterback's decided at Southern Cal. Well, it may be, but they're in a really good spot. They're in a really good spot because I think they may have 3 guys they can win with. And you don't know much about the other 2 if you don't follow recruiting because they're true freshmen. Jackson Dart is making big moves at Southern Cal. This is the talk of fall camp right now. It's certainly the talk of a lot of the team insiders at USC. And I was reading Blake Brockermeyer, for example, who does a lot of the national camp intel stuff for us on 247sports.com. And he was writing about this yesterday. Said he had talked to some people at Southern Cal, and all they wanted to talk about was the progress Jackson Dart's making. Now, who is that? You may not remember that name. It's a great quarterback name. But you may not remember him if you don't follow recruiting. This is a guy that I think our rankings council had some trouble with. Remember, there were some places playing high school football, other places weren't. So Jackson Dart ended up rocketing up the 24/7 player rankings. I think he finished number 69 overall in the country. So he's a 4-star kid, top 100 kid. But even at that lofty rating, there were some people out there who would tell you, I don't care what he's rated, circle that kid. In my mind, he is a 5-star, slam dunk, can't miss. He's one of the best I've seen. Well, okay. You just file that away. Well, now I'm flipping through the Rolodex in my head because I start to hear it. It's kind of manifesting itself. And I'm not telling you quarterback controversy because I don't believe in the phrase. But I am telling you, I don't think Keaton Slovis is in a position here where they can go out there to start the season and they're just ho-humming their way to victories and this offense is sputtering along. I think he's got pressure on him. His coaching staff understands they got pressure on them. So if you think that they're going to maintain status quo just for the sake of status quo, you're kidding yourself. I want to read you this. This is from our Blair Angulo. I'm going to briefly read so you know what this kid's about. And then I'm talking about Jackson Dart, the kind of scouting report we had on him. There's some pretty rare language in here. I read a lot of these quarterback scouting reports. Our guys don't talk like this very often. Prototypical size for the position, accurate passer, great feel for the game, good arm strength and timing, versatility to operate different looks, tremendous touch, anticipation to fit throws between levels, athletic, gritty enough to run for tough yardage, flashes all the intangibles necessary, can sustain zip on his throws when rolling outside the pocket, potential multi-year starter at the Power 5 level, projects as a future NFL draft selection. That guy is capable of playing winning football for Southern Cal this year. I don't know if he will play this year. I'm telling you, a lot of people around that program think he's there now as a true freshman. And that is a mouthful. That's why I don't say it lightly. Let's move on. Let's go from USC all across the country to UNC. At North Carolina, what's the name we have continued to speak about at North Carolina? Well, on this show, it's been Ty Chandler. We adopted him. We adopted young Ty, who's not young at all, into our family here. And so he's one of ours. But we need more than Ty Chandler in the running back room there at North Carolina. I was doing the Inside Carolina YouTube show right after our show the other night, and we're kind of going back and forth. And some of the guys there think that he's not quite the hinge player that I think he is. And one of the best strategies, if you're a national host, is to go on a website where all those folks do is follow that one team all day, every day, and disagree with them. What a great strategy I chose. But I do feel this way. I do feel this way about Ty Chandler. I think he's a very disproportionately important player in the context of the ACC race, maybe even the playoff race. But I need to get him some help. And I think they found it. I think they're starting to develop some depth there. This is not a new name to Tar Heel fans, but I think Caleb Hood may be a name you want to keep an eye on. He is a different style back now. He is 5'11", 230 at the moment. So obviously, he's not a guy that you're going to use like Steve Sarkisian used Najee Harris last year. Different skill set even than Ty Chandler. But he's a guy that you can clearly tell just by the body type alone can take 8 to 12 carries off of your shoulders if you want him to or more and be very effective. I think they're where they want to be at wide receiver. The team thinks they're where they want to be at wide receiver, but they've got momentum going on all fronts right now. Obviously, you got to win football games, and that Virginia Tech game is not going to be an easy opener, but pay attention to this. There is a massive announcement coming up next Saturday. Looked like I was going to have to go to this one, but I'm not. Travis Shaw is the number 3 overall player in the country. He's out of Greensboro, North Carolina. He is a 6'3", 6'5", 310-pound defensive lineman. The smart money is on North Carolina there. And if they land him, it's going to be the biggest commitment for North Carolina and that staff to date. And that's a staff that's been rolling in recruiting already. So a lot of good things, a lot of positive vibes around North Carolina football, not the least of which is they're expected to contend in the ACC this year. And lastly, a program we have not spoken about yet. I came up with a new phrase, kind of a new term by accident the other night. Rattler. Wasn't talking about the quarterback situation at Oklahoma. I was trying to come up with a name to give a team that people are not talking a whole lot about, but yet they are, in my mind, expected to make some noise. And I came up with Rattler. And basically, that's the same deal as when you got the radio turned up in the car and you hit mute and there's just a sound coming from somewhere. And you don't know what it is, but you know the sound's not supposed to be there. And it's distracting, and you wish it'd go away. The car's not operating as it should. Well, the Big 12 this year is supposed to operate as follows. Oklahoma steamrolls everybody. They get a stiff push from Iowa State. Texas, maybe, maybe not. But it's supposed to be Oklahoma with the crimson and cream confetti raining down in the Big 12 championship game, punch their ticket to the playoff. All we have to worry about is what seed we are. But there's a rattle in the Big 12 car, and I think it's TCU. As much as I want to say it's Iowa State, and it may very well be them too, TCU's got a rattle about this team. TCU's an extremely dangerous team this year, and I think TCU could not only be a nice little story, this is a team that can contend in the Big 12. They very much can do that. Health is required for all teams, so I'm not going to even continue to state that prerequisite. But I want to tell you a little story here, because there's one unfolding that's pretty wild. Do you remember the name Marcel Brooks? Those of you at LSU do. Those of you who follow recruiting do. Those of you in Fort Worth know the name. But if you live in Norfolk, Virginia, does the name Marcel Brooks really mean anything to you? Probably not. Marcel Brooks was originally a linebacker who went to LSU out of high school. 6'3", about 210, 215 right now is what he plays at. But he doesn't play linebacker, and he's not at LSU. He has transferred to TCU, did that a couple of years ago, and he is a wide receiver now. The thing about Marcel Brooks is even when he was going to be a linebacker, he was going to be one of those freaky athletic linebackers because he is just that. He's a guy who happens to be big, but he can fly. He's got incredible quick twitch about him. He's got now a really good wingspan, but he's got really advanced route running ability for a guy who used to be a linebacker. He's going to probably start as a wide receiver for TCU this year. And TCU, need I remind you, has a cat named Quentin Johnson who projects as a very early draft pick coming up, a big-bodied guy. He's a guy you can lean on. He is a game changer. But now we're adding depth to that wide receiver core. And also, don't forget, this is also a team that has Zach Evans at running back. Zach Evans was passed over by a lot of teams despite his five-star talent because there were some off-field concerns. But all the while, the talk in the recruiting industry always was, if the off-field stuff ends up working itself out, like if he's not a problem from the neck up, TCU just got the steal of the recruiting cycle. Well, the off-field stuff hasn't been that big an issue for Zach Evans since he got to TCU. And now they're going to have him, second-year guy now, and they're going to have a couple of probably future Sunday freak type guys. They're going to have a much improved offensive line, which was the Achilles heel of this team last year. And they got Max Duggan there. Max Duggan, poor Max Duggan, forgotten. Seems like he's drawn AARP mail. I think he's listed as a sophomore right now. This is a very dangerous team. If all I have to worry about is defense for TCU, and I got Gary Patterson running things for his 45th year in a row, I think TCU is a dangerous team. So these are some things to keep an eye on. That concludes our national Camp Whispers and Intel, but we will return to this very topic on Sunday.